Season 4 of the Humans and AI podcast is finally here. This time we're doing things a bit different. We're still chatting with incredible founders and leaders shaping AI, HPC and GPU infrastructure, but with a sharper focus on today. The roles they're in, the challenges they're facing, what's actually working and what's not. It's real, it's current, it's straight from the people building the AI ecosystem. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Hey David, great to have you on. How are you doing?
Great, thanks so much for having me.
No problem at all. Well, look, it's great. We've been talking about this for a little while now, but for the benefit of the people listening and watching, do you mind just doing a bit of an intro as to who you are, where you're working, and a bit about the business?
Sure, no problem. I'm Dave Aronchick. I'm CEO of a company called Expanso. What we like to do is we talk about being your intelligent global data pipeline. So if you're out there and you're using AI and ML, which if you're listening to this podcast, I suspect you are, you know that data, inbound data, is the lifeblood of your organization. However, very inconveniently, most of that data is not created inside a single data center in Paris or Iowa or Tokyo. It is created out there in the real world, cross zone, cross cloud, cross region, on-prem, edge, transportation, retail, manufacturing, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff is collecting data. It's your job to get it to where the GPUs and the AI are either being trained or giving you answers, giving you inference. That's what we do. We help by putting pipelines, portions of your pipelines, everywhere you're collecting raw data, and help ship it in a structured, intelligent way with full reproducibility and traceability and lineage all the way back to whatever data warehouse you're already using. I like to joke we're in partnership with just about every data warehouse, and every time I start the meeting, I'm like, look, we don't build the data warehouse, we simply help fill it up. And that's what we do.
Fantastic. Well, look, we'll go into more detail about that shortly. But before we do that, it would be good just to learn a little bit more about you. So obviously, you've had a great career already, worked for some amazing brands that a lot of people will know. But if we can just take it back to the beginning, sort of what made you get into the tech space, really? Where's the passion start?
Yeah, it's really funny. I was just recounting because my son just graduated and he's off at university and he wants to study to be a doctor, which was my goal as well. I really love the human body. I think it's an incredible thing. But I was always being very pulled in the technology direction, just because I was so interested. And I actually got into med school, but I never took a single class. Because I just had become so enraptured that I started doing startups, and I did a bunch of startups, and then went off to work at the companies you mentioned. I have worked at Microsoft and Amazon, and but the most recent arc of my career started about 10 years ago when I was the first non-founding PM for Kubernetes. For those that don't know, Kubernetes is a very, very successful distributed orchestration system, a way to help you make reason about a whole bunch of machines at once, and treat them like they're basically a single machine. That was an amazing time. I joined when it was nothing, and I would say in spite of me, not because of me, it's grown to many billions of dollars and changed the industry as a whole. And so I did that at Google, and then after some years doing that, I said, hey, I really think this AI and ML is going to be a thing. And the year is 2018, and most folks, or end of 2017, and most folks were like, yes, it will, but it's going to look like an API, which, based on all the data they had to date, the Transformer paper, Attention Is All You Need, hadn't even come out yet. But I kept saying, well, I don't think this is the case because the places that people are going to need to be AI are going to be everywhere, and you're going to need to train on this very specific things and so on and so forth. So I started a machine learning project at the time called Kubeflow, which gives you the ability to build a reproducible way to train and infer your machine learning models everywhere. That also has gone on to great success. And I then took that and we started up a whole Kubeflow practice at Microsoft, and I worked out of the office of the CTO, where I worked on open source machine learning strategy, Microsoft, as you know, has become an enormous supporter of open source and a real model, and, someone who contributes enormously in the AI space. I helped with some of the early OpenAI partnership work and things like that. And then I decided to go off and do this. And what this was really I had seen for about 10 years. Um, it is the reality, the dream of the world that you take these models and you put them everywhere. But the reality of your data not being in all these places, and I heard it with Kubernetes, I heard it with Kubeflow. Hey, can't we do this? Can't we do these things, but do them everywhere? I just kept hearing that over and over again, so decided to go off and invent the stupid thing, which we did. In 2022, we started it. In 2023, we founded it as a company that was Expanso, and that's where we're going from there.
Fantastic. So, I mean, obviously, you work for Microsoft, you work for Amazon, you work for Google. In product really has been predominantly, from what I could see. So it's
Yeah,
product management, product engineering, and there's some of the biggest and best names, within tech, within cloud,
yeah.
within AI. So obviously, you've taken a lot of learnings from that, and obviously you noticed I suppose, a gap or certainly a problem that could be solved. What was the inspiration for actually setting up your own business then to do it? And also, there was a significant importance there because you did it with a co-founder as well.
I did. Yeah, the so I was lucky enough to have a very, very senior AWS engineer. He led all of their internal log processing, so basically what we're doing now, but like in a more distributed way. Join as CTO, the learnings, I would say there are two things that they have as an advantage to so many businesses. Both of them, both of them, all three of them, AWS, Microsoft, and Google, all understand very, very clearly where the money is coming from, right? And that is so important because that is so well honed, and it means that they can have a conversation around any new investment in the spirit of, is this going to, I remember being in a meeting with, I don't want to be a name dropper, so a very, very, very senior person at Microsoft, and the comment just kept back to, does this spin the meters? Right? Does this continue to get more usage? Not from a dollars perspective, just more usage. That's very much what they focused on. Is this easier? Is this faster? Is this more reliable? Does it help people do it? And so allowed them to have this big strategy, focus on, hey, you know what? We don't care. Yes, we love Windows, but Linux spins the meters too. Yes, we love Cosmo DB, but Databricks spins the meters too. It made it very clear a lot of things that end up being very confusing for people. So all of those companies have that mentality in mind, right? Whatever it might be that is specific to that company, they make sure that all the efforts go into that. So that helps them both make product investments, but also helps them understand what the emergency situations are. So if there's like a downtime, they staff those. The SRE execute, process, the 5-question process at Amazon, all are brilliant at getting to making sure their customers are back online as quickly as possible. Because why? Because they want to spin the meters. Now, again, obviously, there's a lot of subtlety in that. You want happy customers. You want to make sure they're doing this. But it just makes things so clear how to go off and address this. Now, one of the challenges around this is it makes it hard for them to invest in new businesses because the level of impact in those new businesses will not move the needle on their core metrics for a long time, right? I remember being in a very senior conversation at a different company, and it was conversation. They're like, well, this is we think in 5 years' time this is going to be whatever, $1 billion, and they're like, well, all right, that doesn't really, okay, I get it. They're making 100 bets, and it's pure portfolio
Yeah.
analysis, right? They can either bet on 100 or they can bet on 10 or they can bet on 1 or whatever, and ultimately people being spread thin is going to hurt. So like they have to bet that, of the next 10 things, they will do one of three things that they bet on, right? Either one, move the needle from a metrics perspective within some rational amount of time, and 5 years really is not enough, right? Like it's too much, right?
Yeah.
They really need to see this moving it much more quickly. So they have to see that, or it's deeply strategic to their business because if they don't do this, then dollars and people and whatever will go elsewhere because it'll be such a massive missing gap that it'll hurt existing business, or it will be a massive accelerator to their teams. So they will be able to work on other things much more quickly. And I would say that's generally the framework. And I promise I'm getting back to the original question here. I'm sure your listeners are bored to tears.
No,
But
not at
your
all.
question was, why go off and do this thing?
Hmm.
The reason is because the thing that I'm working on will fit none of those
Yeah.
categories, right? I would love this to be a $10 billion business, but let's be honest, right? Like, I will be very happy with $1 billion, and again, probably not going to move the needle for any of those big clouds. I want to meet customers where they are,
Hmm.
and that is good. They want to meet customers where they are, but where they are, where customers are, does not spin the meter. If a customer gets a brand new ML pipeline in place on 10,000 vehicles out there, which we can do very, very easily, um, precisely zero of the dollars of that pipeline are on any of those hyperscale clouds.
Yeah.
Uh, and three, it doesn't accelerate their dev teams. Their dev teams are focused on the services they host and run. And again, that's just not where customers are. And so as a result, I was like, look, there's this massive gap. We know that this is the direction people are going. Gartner says 65% of all data is being generated outside of data centers today. Um, the hyperscale cloud companies, it's just highly unlikely they're going to go down this route. And so I said I'm going to take a shot at it. And to be honest, like I truly didn't. I thought I was done doing startups. This is my fourth one. I thought I was done after three. I was like, wow, that was really hard. Not that I don't love the startup game. I really, really do. But this phase of getting out there and having to explain people who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it is really taxing. Versus if you show up and you say, "Hey, I'm from Amazon or I'm from Google or I'm from Microsoft," they're like, "Okay, I know what that is. Like, what do you got
Hmm.
for me?" It just becomes a much easier conversation to get some stuff done.
I mean, to be fair, that's a really interesting perspective. I've never really necessarily thought about how Amazon or Google might measure it, right? So, sort of ticking on the meter as opposed to, startups tend to think of cash and how quickly they can
Absolutely,
actually get some money through the door. Because
absolutely.
obviously your job is to make sure you can pay the wages and grow a business, as is mine. So obviously you've taken all that learning experience, having worked for the
Yeah,
hyperscalers, you've identified a gap that doesn't necessarily appeal to them, so hence why you're doing it for yourself. You've done 4 startups as
yeah.
well. I mean, look, that's like I say, it takes a special character to go back and do it again. So, or
I
lack of
mean, or an
sanity, one of
idiot.
the two. Yeah, one of the two. I mean, with those startups that you've done before, what have you taken from them now? Because obviously, when you were completely green, never known before,
Yeah.
completely lost. How have you built this business now, maybe a little bit differently to previous?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. So, one is it is really difficult to overstate the
Hmm.
amount of stuff taken care of for you today, right? In my first startup, we were building like raw. This was ages ago. Raw Windows libraries to
Hmm.
display an app that would plug into a browser, but like ultimately like we had to have like full libraries that we were writing.
Hmm.
In my second startup, I we did it in New York, and I remember like at 2 o'clock in the morning going down to the data center to fix Sun machines that we had bought because one of the memory chips had been shipped and was loose, and manually like putting my thumbs in, pulling the thing open at 75 or whatever 175 decibels, like fans, doing that kind of stuff. The third one, at least we did have AWS and other hosted services at the time, but we wrote our own CI/CD tools. We were using Ruby and Capistrano, if I remember right, and like we were using our own JavaScript frameworks. I think jQuery was out at the time, but like we had to build all sorts of things on top of that. CSS, didn't have any of the frameworks that you have today, and so on. And so we keep moving up the layers of the stack to higher and higher layers of abstraction. Now, you know, you can go and look at like people like whatever 37 Signals and other folks who Stack Overflow famously, I don't know if they still do, but very famously they like ran their own servers and things like that. And you can get massive cost savings and massive efficiency improvements if it's worth it. But right now, I can go spin up. I have a demo that I show to customers all the time of spinning up 1,000 nodes running our software as sample sensors out there in the world in under a minute. Right? They're all spot nodes on various clouds. Like that's just unheard of. So I think there's layers. There's so many layers of that are now taken care of for you, and that's a really big learning and different and something that you can really trade off. What I will say is much, much harder today is I think the go-to-market is much, much harder. And that's the thing that like nobody still knows exactly how you're going to do it. Now, there's an enormous survivorship bias when you go out onto Blue Sky or other things like that, and you see someone producing a automated thread of AI slop that is just like, oh, what do you call it? Man, you just won the whatever, what is it? The Derby?
Or the Premier League.
Yeah, whatever. They just won the Premier League. This is what it told me about B2B software sales, right? Like it's just like you see that kind of like automated garbage all over the place. Now, what I will say is, for every one you see getting 1,000 reposts or appearing in your LinkedIn feed or whatever, there are 100,000 that went nowhere. Right? And so we all think that we can like replicate this or do this or whatever, and that's just not true. And rising above the noise, figuring out where to go can be so challenging. And I would love to say we've cracked that nut. We haven't. I'm very, very lucky that I have a lot of experience and I'm able to leverage my network to get great conversations with many companies out there, but getting more awareness and also the enterprise software motion is still incredibly hard. And I don't think there's a near or even long-term solution for that, because at the end of the day, it will still mean finding a human being, getting into their awareness sphere, and helping them identify that your thing solves a problem that they have right now and fits their budget and provides some overall benefit. And even in 20 years, I just don't think that's going to change. A human being is still going to make that decision, likely.
I totally agree with you. I think I speak to a lot of founders and sort of senior leaders within startups and scale-ups. And the go-to-market strategy is one that, quite frankly, is keeping a lot of people in jobs because it's not straightforward.
Absolutely.
It's hugely difficult, huge challenge. It's a very competitive landscape that we're in now. There's new businesses popping up all the time. And I think it isn't something that people have quite got their handle on it. I think sometimes people overcomplicate it, potentially. And I think I often see different businesses that are not maybe clear in their proposition and actually don't know how to articulate what they do as easy and as simply, or if even in layman terms, because obviously depending on your audience isn't always necessarily that technical or something like that. So I think that's often a challenge. Yeah. How are you doing? Obviously, you've got a great network. Marketing's huge. Is it conferences, is it events? Have you got salespeople that are going out and spreading the word as well?
A little bit of
partnerships.
Yeah, a little bit of dealer's choice. I will say that it really does span the spectrum
Mm-hmm.
of all, like I said, all of the above. I'm
Mm-hmm.
out there at conferences. I'm out there at meetups. As I mentioned, I'll be at AI Engineer and Big Data London, in 2 weeks, and I just got back from 2 weeks in San Francisco and New York. So I'm getting a lot of frequent flyer miles. I think there's no um, substitute for
Mm-hmm.
those kind of like in-person things. But then, I have everything else on top. We have a LinkedIn blog, and I'm writing a book, and I have a webinar, and so on. And my job is mostly to leverage what we can out of the network that we have,
Mm-hmm.
that I have, and perform as many experiments as I possibly can to see what works and what doesn't. Unfortunately, with the way the world looks today, I don't think there is a an easy answer,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just going to have to build a framework that repeatably, trustably, gets things done, and measure whether or not it works or not.
I think that as a CEO, and obviously you come from a technical background, you're now sitting in a role that's obviously hugely beneficial, having that technical expertise. But you've obviously had to develop commercial skills over the years and learn how to run a business, and obviously you've done it 4 times. How do you actually organise yourself where you're able to go out there and speak to customers and able to drive that? Because obviously the list of jobs for a CEO
Yeah.
in a growing business is, well, it's never done, is it? So how do you actually organise the company in a way that you can actually go out to market?
I think that is a big challenge. I've tried as hard as I can to use the tools that are available to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means, making sure we have HubSpot and sequences, making
Mm-hmm.
sure I have a defined process for going through my inbox every day, so on and so forth. Incredibly important. But then making sure that I have the materials necessary based on what I'm hearing from people. So, having a one pager, having a full slide deck, having a sales deck, having a demo that does this, having a demo that does that. These kind of things, having videos and things that we can share. That's kind of the minimum. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
arrows in your quiver you have to do. And then trying to be as efficient as you can with those things as you go out to the world. So, making sure you're reusing what you can, making sure you're repurposing what you can. Um, so taking what you have and tweaking it slightly. We're talking to a self-driving car company, so let's make sure we talk about this, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I love checklists. I love defined processes. I love not thinking, oh, okay, it's 8:30 in the morning on a Monday. I know that I have to have a LinkedIn post, within the next 24 hours. What am I going to go talk about?
Mm-hmm.
I'm dedicating the next hour to do that. But defining those things and being regimented about it, is incredibly important.
I totally agree. I think sometimes you can't see the wood through the trees when you've got so many things coming at you. Trying to organise yourself to actually be productive is a skill in itself. So, talking about Expanso then, and you gave a very sort of high level overview of the business at the start. You able to go into a little bit more detail about really the problems you're solving and the types of customers that are going to want to be talking to you?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about it. So, like I said, the if you are a customer who, already is spending $500,000 or more, 500,000 euros, pounds, whatever, or more on your data warehouse today, I can help. Now, that's not saying that this is purely a cost play. It is whatever play you'd like. And I like to say there are three different plays that I can go into extended discussion with you about, right? One is you want to increase your developers' velocity. 70% or more, depending on your organization, of time is spent on data ingestion, data cleaning, data pipeline management, so on and so forth. That all happens before you can even use the data. right? So if you are seeing problems in your business around that, great. We're here to help. And the way we do that is we help structure the data, we help clean the data, we help ingest it in a reliable way, so on and so forth. Means your devs, the people already working for you, can now focus on things that are more important to your business, namely using the data rather than just ingesting it. So that's kind of category one. If your problem is cost and risk and governance and I like to bundle these all in the concept of control of your data. Great, we can help with that. Because we operate at the front end of your data pipeline, including on-prem or on the edge or on transportation, we can help. We do this by helping to structure your data or clean your data or filter your data or put data in multiple locations. Lots of people might push all their data into a central data warehouse and then kind of like farm it out to various locations instead of saying, hey, you know what? This raw data should really go into this cold storage. This aggregated data should go into this hot storage. And anything that says whatever, Premier League should go into this emergency list, right? Those kind of things we do from where you're collecting the data rather than waiting for it to get all the way down the pipe and then finally doing an analysis. So that's kind of category two. And then category three is if you're looking to adopt AI and ML, and let's be honest, who isn't, we help you by structuring your data before it gets to your data warehouse. One of the biggest problems that people face today around data is that it lands in an incredibly unstructured way. It might be, a single CSV string, or it's got the wrong types, or it's got the wrong structure, or maybe it's all properly structured, but you lost the lineage. You forgot where it came from. And then, in 3 months' time, when you're trying to debug why the model is now not performing, you don't realize that, it's not performing because this particular set of sensors came from this factory in Manchester when they were having a, hurricane, right? Like, it's so easy to lose that it will cost your AI and ML teams and models much, much more if you do that and make it much worse performing. We help by making sure that data is well structured and clean and easy to ingest and use either in training or inference. Basically, I like to say we really do unlock the power of ML and AI. Now, again, we're not training the models and we're not doing that, but we're making the stuff you're already using and training much better. And so, depending on where you are along those spectrums, I can have a deep conversation with all of these. And again, I know it sounds like magic, but no new APIs, no new platforms. You keep the data warehouse and pipelines and tools and everything you already know and love. We just help start the process in a way that makes everything else better.
That's quite a few solutions that you've got there, really. So you've got three core areas that you can actually sort of fit. And in terms of then customers, so that's largely where people have got data and it's actually being able to collect it and actually bring it back to a central source. But you're actually doing the work at the source of the data, aren't you? So you're getting close to source.
Exactly right. So I do like to say, we run the data where the source is. And by that I mean, many things are incredibly locked down. As an example, we're doing a lot of work with power companies, and they might have wind turbines that are generating enormous amounts of data. Now, these things are incredibly locked down. They were given to them by the vendor, and they have their own operating system, and you couldn't touch them to save your life. What you can do is next to those turbines, and this is what they do already, they'll have one of those little offices, temporary portable rooms or whatever that have a few servers in them, and that's where they collect the data. So the wind turbine goes to that, and then they move from that into their back end. And so what I like to say is we can run on wind turbines, and it's true, we really can. Our thing is very small. This is my visual aid. It's a Raspberry Pi. It costs about $35, and we run great on this all the way up to 8 GPU machines. But we don't have to. We can easily run near where the data is, continue your standard ingestion process, and then move over it and then push it to the back end. And so that's what we do. But by doing this, it gives you so much more control and management and reliability in your pipelines instead of waiting to 17 steps forward. It's just physics at that point and the speed of light that makes things better.
Fantastic. So you've built this business. You've now gone to market. You've got customers. I think you've got case studies on the website. You're working
Yeah.
with the forces in the US as well. So you've got different services for them. I mean, are you able to give us a bit of information around that and just an example of what you've been doing for those guys?
Yeah, for sure. So in all these cases, it really is. It does tend to be a little bit transport heavy, and I want to stress that it doesn't have to be transport heavy. But that's a very very natural place for us because the networks are so poor, right? And
Yeah.
you're just very likely to run into challenging networks. But with U.S. Navy, for example, these are underwater drones. The underwater drones disconnect for extended periods of time. These are drones that simply scan the ocean floor and report back information. I should say, by the way, we were cleared to talk about all this, and this is very public stuff. But basically, they just have things that literally disconnect for weeks at a time. And what we do is we run on those things and provide real time analysis of the logs, not a super deep, thorough analysis, but just enough to notify the drone if it should take action. So over the course of those 6 weeks, we'll simply watch, and if the engine is exceeded some metrics that they say, or they've seen a particular signal that they're like, hey, we really should communicate this, we simply tell the drone, hey, it's time to go surface. And then when it surfaces, it sends the important bits to someplace else. And at the same time, it will stream the rest of it to where it needs to go. So that's a really easy story because normally you wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to get immediate analysis. You would have to wait until this thing connected in order to do a bunch of work. Similar story for a solar field that we're working with in Australia. They have many solar fields, all of which are connected via things like microgrids. Very poor networking, 3G, 4G kind of networking, and the inverters are collecting data on a per second basis. This is very challenging because they want to get faster signals so they can make decisions, but they can't because it would simply overwhelm their network. So by providing some simple averaging over the networks, we are able to do a bunch of work that they can now send the highest priority signal back first and then trickle the rest of the data later, right? So that's another example where we're able to do that. Another really big example that I can't name who it is, unfortunately, but very large company, very large company, has a number of customers in Vietnam. Vietnam has very restricted data privacy regulations, and that's great. They want to collect the data into their central data warehouse so that they know what's happening on in this particular retail chain and so on and so forth. The problem is that they can't move that data because every swipe of a credit card is collecting PII, personally identifiable information. So what they're doing with us is they're using us as a repeatable way to transform the data in country so that they're stripping or one-way hashing all of the PII, and then they're able to move the data feed, but without that PII included.
Yep.
And incredibly simple, like you can do this, but can you do it repeatably? Can you do it with auditing? Can you do it, such that you can change these things, change this configuration from a central pipeline and central fleet analysis? And that's what we do as well. So again, these are 3 examples. Obviously, I have lots more that I can talk about. What I like to say is, if you have an Ethernet cable, right, congratulations, you have a distributed system, and you will run into data movement challenges. what we do is we help you make it feel like all of these data challenges are now under your control, and you can manage them in a much more elegant way.
And it's that speed, isn't it, really, that seems to be one of the leading driving forces. I appreciate you can save costs and all those kinds of things, but that speed to get to the data and understand that data
So
is
you're absolutely right. Speed is the killer thing. But I will say that there's something really funny about it, which is if you go and talk to most of these people, you will learn the amount of data that is never used ever is
really.
huge, right? It just sits there in a silo. And maybe if you're really, really, really lucky, take that example with Vietnam, right? You might be able to call up a data analyst who happens to be in the Vietnamese office who can go and manually look at the local, database and give you a verbal report. Oh, this many people did this thing on this day, right? But that's it. And like that is like a manual process. So I would say like yes, speed is an enormous winner, but even just unlocking usage is still a big challenge today.
So just on that, I mean, you've got my curiosity now. So with all this data that's sat there just not being interrogated, it's knowledge at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
So why is it that it's not being interrogated? Why are people not actually accessing, the secrets within that knowledge and within that data?
So, I mean, it's funny because you go and talk to a lot of these people, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Unless you can draw a crystal clear line, and for those of you that are working in big companies today, working in any reasonable sized companies, I always give people advice like go and figure out what the highest level priority, one, two, or three, and really you should try and avoid three, one or two for your company and your division and what you're looking to achieve. Figure out what those are and how they are measured. If it's money, great. If it's new customers, great. If it's this, great. You figure that out. And then you should be doing your level best to draw a crystal clear line between the work that you are doing every single day and that top line priority. And if you can't, I'm not going to say you shouldn't be doing this, but it is always going to be hard. You're always going to be justifying yourself, which is super annoying. Now, this comes back to your question, right? Why do people not do this? Well, because it's actually remarkably easy to not be able to draw a line between something and something else, right? So, that Vietnamese example that I bring up there earlier, right? You know, is that going to move the needle at a company this size? Is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? Well, I don't know, right? Like, I'm hoping it will. But at the end of the day, it's not one of their top markets. It's not this. It's not that. Maybe I'm getting into I'm not helping this product manager who identified the need and saw us as a solution that much. I think I am. I'm being a little bit facetious here. I genuinely think I am because I think anyone wants a full view of their business and real time analysis and so on. Um, but when if you're a VP at that company or a director or even a senior engineer and you're looking at all the things, you're probably not going to pick Vietnam. And again, I'm not trying to like badmouth them, right? It's just like you have infinite amount of work, and if
Yeah.
they're like, "Hey, I have bugs in the UK and the US and France and Vietnam," guess what you're going to work on, right?
Yep.
So like it's those kind of things. If we go back to the power company as an example, a lot of them just didn't think they may not have even been aware this was an option, right? They're just like, well, I guess we just have to make decisions over 4-week old data instead of doing it real time. you know, a lot of people kind of like self-rationalize or just deal with it and say, well, that's good enough. And again, that's fine. But when I show them that in not not months, not weeks, not days, but literally hours, we can provide value and do it, they're like, oh my God, I wish you had been here last year or whatever, because this would have made a really big difference. It really does come down to the ROI. There's an amount, the return whatever that is, that top level metric you're looking to do, but then also the level of investment. And that's why we've worked so hard to really make it trivial to implement this. And like I said, you drop a Raspberry Pi, we're all self-hosted, we're all run wherever you want, completely under your control, completely under your security. You drop us where you'd like, and instantly you can unlock a whole bunch of things. And so the only way we could do that, if we asked you to rewrite everything and adopt a new SDK and bring on a new management structure and tear out the thing that people just spent the past 2 years implementing, like that is a much, much bigger investment. And so the return has to be commensurate with that. We are a much smaller investment, meaning, the return can be smaller. I will be honest with you, I think our return can be just as big or bigger, but at the end of the day, the investment is very, very small.
Well, yeah, and let's say at the end of the day, that data that you're bringing, quicker, more efficiently, more accurately, in some cases you've organised it and what have you, you're enabling them to make business decisions ultimately.
Absolutely.
That's essentially what you're unlocking all that data to make business decisions, whether it be internal decisions, whether it be customer facing decisions.
Absolutely.
That's what you're able to do.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it's funny, like I always joke, if you go into your like Google Analytics or something, you look at your website. And, this is almost a universal experience. They go in and they're assaulted with 700 metrics, and you're like, okay, but which one do I care about? So it really is not just about the data. It's about exactly what you just said, helping you to make business decisions. And the only way you're going to get there is by having a set of tooling and a set of pipelines that collect everything you need together and then ultimately deliver what you need. And that's our real goal.
So, well, speaking of goals for the business, I mean, so you've been going a couple of years now. What does the next sort of 12, 18 months look like for you guys as a company? Obviously, you've got great services, great products. What is it you're looking at doing?
I appreciate that. Our number one goal by a mile is have more conversations with the right people. It is a endless challenge that the people that we're looking to have those conversations with, it ends up usually not being a single person, right? It ends up usually being a cohort of people that come together. The person caring about cost, the person caring about architecture, the person caring about developer efficiency. All three of those, sometimes they exist in a single person, usually they don't. And so getting those conversations and having it come together is critical for us.
Yeah, I imagine a company that is spending the amount of money that you were talking about earlier, half a million plus, it's going to be more than one single decision maker, I'm sure. So, look, before we finish up, there's a few things one question I particularly wanted to ask you. So, as a serial entrepreneur, we do have a lot of budding entrepreneurs listening to this podcast. People that maybe even actually in employment, they've got an idea and are looking to start something new. What sort of piece of advice would you give any sort of early in career sort of CEO founder?
So it is very difficult to overstate the value of having conversations with your potential customers as quickly as you possibly can. Like, pay them any amount of money to sit down with you, have a honest conversation, of course. Try and get them to poke holes in what you're building. Make sure that you're there. You're doing it without any sales, without any whatever. Just understanding what their key pain points are is just like it is worth any amount of money you spend. I am not joking. $100,000. Like it is worth that money because the amount you will save later on not making these mistakes is enormous. And it's obviously incredibly important to get there. I would say that that's an enormous one. And then figuring out what your go-to-market is. From that, you're going to develop a sense of your ICP, your customer profile, and begin to identify where they sit and what they're doing, and so on and so forth.
And in terms of the go-to-market, I mean, obviously there's no right or wrong in this day and age, is there, to be fair? It's trying everything. But I mean, in terms of brand presence,
I mean, make no mistake, there are plenty of things wrong. The problem is you absolutely will not know what is wrong until you try. You just won't. You just won't.
Mm-hmm. So getting out there for sure. Okay, well, look, this has been fantastic. You're coming to London next week, did you say? Big Data?
Next week, exactly.
Yeah, so you'll be in town. Obviously, you're also going to Paris as well, I think, for another event. Which one was that?
AI Engineer.
AI Engineer. So this should be out probably just after that. But for the benefit of people that are listening, if they want to learn more about you and about Expanso, you're happy for people to reach out on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. And I mean, just email me directly. My last name, Aronchick, at expanso.io. But you can also find me on every single social and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Well, look, we'll be in touch again soon. You and I are going to meet in London, but obviously we'll have you on again in the future just to see how the business is going. But it's been great. Thank you very much.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Cheers now. All the best. Take care.
You too.
And that's it for this week's episode of Humans in AI. A huge thanks to my guests for sharing their insights and to you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to hit follow, share it with someone in your network, and let me know what you think. There's plenty more coming this season as we dive deeper into the people, the companies, and the ideas shaping AI right now. See you next time.